Season 6 is ending and Season 7 is coming near, so be a dear and hear this tier clearly. A quick disclaimer, this kit review is purely subjective to my own, and I might make mistake and a little bit biased towards railway and efficiencies. Credits to Dej and Hexadox for helping me compose this review. Anyway, here are my ratings. First on the list is Sir Rodon. She's a solid Rapture/Poise ID with a decent Poise generation, 2, 4, 5 coin units with pretty good damage and can work standalone or without team. Her weaknesses are unfocused volley, sometimes throwing with it targeting, defense turn 1 to make it good, meaning she will waste 1 turn, and negative Poise count when having 100% crit. She also negatively impacts the Rapture economy. Overall, she's a pretty solid ID, 8.1 out of 10. Next up, Sir Gregor is a solid Rapture/Poise ID with decent Poise generation as well. Easier Poise count stacking due to skill 3 having only 1 coin compared to Sir Rodon. Can work standalone and a little bit better than Sir Rodon. But he also has some weaknesses such as 1 coin skill 3 relying crit more to dish out damage, and defense turn 1 to make it good, meaning he will waste 1 turn as well. Overall, he is a 8.3 out of 10, better than Sir Rodon. Next ID is Mao Faust. She is the savior of Rapture because she has huge damage and huge infliction. She can skill 3 every turn after having 5 gluttony, and can work standalone but works best in the Rapture team environment. And she's the best single target damage dealer by far. But of course, a unit as strong as her surely has some weaknesses as well. First of all, needing 5 gluttony to perform in other teams is harder than it sounds. Then, she needs some kind of skill to pilot her correctly. First of all, you need to know about clashable counter targeting, and you need to know about the enemy targeting as well, amongst with other stuff. Third, you need to counter every turn or you lose a ton of DPS, and that means her resource spread are pretty bad because it's basically all gluttony. And the last one, she doesn't do as much when the enemy doesn't hit as often. You know, when they are staggered or they use defense skill, because you cannot do counter, you cannot do skill 3, meaning you will deal less damage. But overall, she's a 10 out of 10, the best ID we have so far. Next identities is Sigin Ishmile. She's a strong backup unit and have a great combo with Yisa, which helps her with her poise and potency gain and other skills, and she has a pretty good AoE damage. But her weaknesses are she cannot maintain poise count whatsoever, and she has subpar damage outside of AoE and if she's alone. Overall, 7.2 out of 10. The next ID on the list is Merrcel. He has strong damage and infliction for burn and tremor. He has strong skill tree and capability to make it an AoE skill, and he's very good in tremor team, very good in burn team as well, but he can work standalone very nicely regardless. His weaknesses are he has pretty long ramp up times if you want to maximize his damage. He is a small dead weight after using both ammos because he can only tank, hard to clash because you will lose clash power, and he doesn't have proper team to utilize both tremor and burn to the max at the moment. But it's more of the team problem, to be honest, not the unit problem. Overall, it's a very solid ID and very strong ID, 9.2 out of 10. Next up is Sinclair. He has a good passive for Merrcel or any bullet user, and he has a decent burn infliction. But he has a subpar damage compared to other Season 6 IDs. He doesn't feel like a 3-star unit, more of a 2-star unit. He has low tremor burst for tremor unit, which is 0, 1 and 2 respectively, and he's outclassed on tremor, and there's better Branch Sinclair ID. Overall, is 6.2 out of 10. Pretty bad, but has its uses. Next ID on the list is Corp Autism. He has a great AoE damage on skill 3 if he fulfills its conditional, and a great synergy with Foul Bullet, the Ego. But he needs Ryoshu or Killing Alive to dish out humongous damage. Also, he cannot maintain any poise whatsoever, meaning he's basically a mirror dungeon poise unit. And he is outclassed in poise and outclassed in bleed as well, because Bielsang support is way better than Fielding and Corp Yoshu, and Ringsang bleed count is too huge to miss out on. But overall, he's still a pretty okay ID, 7 out of 10. 7.5 if comboed with Ryoshu. The next on the list is the Corp Autism. The Corp Autism is obviously because it's the Corp, she will have Time Moratorium. She has better damage than Molar Autism if Molar Autism played incorrectly. And she's pretty tanky with her passive that can heal her up to 80% when she's low. But her weaknesses are, she has less tremor burst than Molar Autism, and less damage than a properly played Molar Autism by a lot as well. But overall, she's a pretty solid ID, 7 out of 10. The next ID on the list is Lord of the Hongwin, Honglu. Lord Lu enables Mao Force to do better things than she already is. He also is a huge scene resource giver and damage as well when paired with Heishous. His mechanics also are very complex and opens a lot of combo due to his retreat/bolus mechanic. He can also be on Tremor, Burn, or even Singing team at the moment with the correct Heishous bolus. But of course, every unit has their weaknesses. First, he has a complex learning curve to 100% utilize his kit. Even I'm still learning new things on how to utilize him better, especially his retreat mechanics, since it varies by enemies and can open a lot of optimization chances. But those retreat mechanics needs the lowest HP as well, in which we need the Heishous to be at a specific level, and that brings us to the second point.
What is the leveling?
Also, Lord Lu kinda need other Heishou as well to be good, because without other Heishou, he is still pretty good, but not as good as other identities. He also has huge negative rupture count infliction on its own. And the last point, which is pretty niche in my opinion, is this ID cannot use Tears of the Tarnished Blood efficiently due to how the meta is on Railway. The meta on Railway is to use Tears of the Tarnished Blood that sacrifice Honglu as fast as possible to get resources and deal a ton of damage. But with his passive, you cannot instantly sacrifice him, and instead making him survive for some more turns. But overall, he's a very strong and solid ID, especially when paired with Mao Faust. 9.5 out of 10. Next up is Wu Yisa. He is a tank with cleanse. He upgrades Sigin Ishmile damage and her poise potency gain when paired. Also, he inflicts concussion, which means more rupture damage and staggered threshold raised. Also good AoE damage when the conditions are met. But he has some weaknesses. First of all, he needs uptide 3 when paired with other Heishou, especially on Rupture, because the conditionals on skill 2 changes on uptide 4. Unless you play Rupture without Heishou, which I think is pretty weird. Also same as other Heishou, he has defense skill 1 shenanigans. Line breaker gain is pretty slow as well if I recall correctly. And last one, he has negative rupture count infliction. Overall, he's a pretty solid ID, but his main gimmick is concussion. 6.9 out of 10. Next on the list is Yo Branch Sinclair, or Cochlear. He has a good bolus for Lord Honglu if you want to play Burn. And also, he is strong in Mirror Dungeon due to his double keyword and his coinage, which is 2, 4, and 4. Meanwhile, his weaknesses are Unfocused Volley, which as you can see, I am not a fan of them. He is also an unerased self-burn ID due to the way he gained them, which is to either lose Clash when using skill 3 or counter, with no real way to sustain them whatsoever. And that brings to another point, in which he has HP conditionals. But the only way to lose HP is to lose Clash or get hit, which is not ideal. He is also Rapture count negative, by the way. Overall, he's alright, I guess. 6.1 out of 10. Moving on to the next one, and Corp Yoshu. She's pretty tanky when staggered, very good when combined with Corp Yisang, because he makes Yisang deals huge damage. She self-fuel her own conditionals when not on Tremor team, and she's actually pretty decent bleed count ID, especially her defense. But her weaknesses are she has average damage, her contempt feels like double-edged sword, making her into a tank and deal less damage when fighting a single enemy over an extended period of time. But overall, he is a very solid ID. 7.7 out of 10. Moving on to the next one, it's Faust. She can gain 60 shield every 2 turns, and I think it's pretty neat. She's also a strong mirror dungeon unit, and she's good when you know you don't need her damage instantly, because she can store damage for next turn to deal more damage later on. But she can maintain nor gain any meaningful poise only on skill 3. But poise gain on skill 3 doesn't buff her base power, because the check for her base power buff via poise is before you get the poise. Then, she has a gimmick, but the gimmick is worse than actually playing without her gimmick, which is kinda weird. And the last one is she has mediocre damage at best. Overall, she is a pretty bad ID. 4 out of 10. Moving on to the next one, it's Prince Merrcel. He is a huge bleed inflictor. He's empower other Manchalan IDs but still deal good damage, and he can heal himself and allies. But his cons are he's pretty much locked to bleed or La Manchalan IDs most of the time, and his Rapture infliction are pretty bleak. That's why I said he is a mere dungeon Rapture unit. But overall, he is a very strong ID or very solid ID. 9 out of 10. Next up is Corp Heat Cliff. He is a good NVRS team user because he has NV defense and NV skill tree as well, and he has huge burst on skill tree and can generate quite more than one skill tree per back. But his cons are he is outclassed in other team other than NVRS because multi-crack hit is better for charge generation in my opinion. Full stop Heatcliffe is better for general purposes, and Yo Heatcliffe has more uses on Rapture. Also, while you can get more skill tree, Heatcliffe needs to be immobilized for 1 turn, meaning 0 damage from him on that turn, and need outside source of charge generation to make him fully efficient if you want to go that route. But overall, he's a mediocre ID in my opinion. 6.5 out of 10. The next ID on the line is Rodon. She is the best retreat unit for Lord Lu, with her skill 1 on the at -1 Rapture count, and if you use skill 3, you will inflict Shatter Mark, which will inflict more Gluttony and more Gloom damage for 3 turns, meaning your team will do more damage. She also is a great mirror dungeon ID, with her having 2 keywords and a lot of infliction, as well as having high HP that we can consider her a tank. But the tankiness of her is kind of double-edged sword as well, since usually people, well, railway people want her at a lower HP than most Heijus, so she can be the number 1 retreat unit. She needs to be at a very low level compared to the other Heijus, which brings us to this crossroads of dilemma. Either have her low level and make her deal even less damage than she already has, or have her high level but you cannot execute the strat easily. If only there's a way to make both possible, such as making unit level lower. Nah, it's too far-fetched. Also, all that infliction that she has will still make her a negative count unit, both on Sinking and Rapture, That's why I said they are a great Mirror Dungeon ID, because there's no way to sustain them nicely outside of Mirror Dungeon. She also doesn't use much use apart from her skill tree giving her Shatter Mark in both Rapture and Sinking, due to how competitive those statuses are at the moment. But overall, she's still usable and have its niche use. 6.7 out of 10. Next, it's time for Yo Branch Heatcliffe or Cockcliff. He is the strongest Heisho. In Mirror Dungeon speedrunning due to the amount of infliction and coin that he had, which is 3, 4, and 5 respectively. He also can sustain self-burn way better compared to the other chicken, to the point where it's viable, especially when it's substituted in. But of course, he has some weaknesses as well, such as Unfocused Volley, of course, and his skill tree too is locked on 20 Battlebot Instinct that needs at least 3 turns unless you kill enemy 2 turns in a row or multi-slotting him. Also, a common theme here, he has huge negative Rapture count, worse than Cockclair if I recall correctly. But at the end of the day, he has more usage compared to Cockclair, 7.1 out of 10. The second to last ID this season is Drifting Blade Hongwin Yoshu. She gives a lot of Gloom resources and Rapture potency generated as well due to her passive. She also is a great damage dealer due to the same passive as well, boosting her damage output. Her passive also allows her to heal allies SP, which in some cases is a very good resource to have, especially earlier fights. But not only that, she also has a lot of Rapture potency infliction, which makes her really good in Mirror Dungeon. But that doesn't mean she's bad outside of it like some of the units I mentioned here. But of course, the eternal debate between Dire Yoshu and Mao Yoshu, which actually Dire Yoshu would be better. If only Mao Yoshu does not have Deathrite haste, because Dire Yoshu is outclassed by a mere Deathrite at the moment, at least until we get better ways to maintain and or gain Rapture count. But until then, we will have to wait. She also cannot manage poise potency nor count by herself without outside help or ego, which granted, she has Thorakalgia. But her innate ability that makes her unable to maintain poise is a weakness in my opinion. Overall, she's a solid and strong ID, but definitely need an investment. 8 out of 10. And last, but definitely not least, not because she's strong, but because there are worse ID out there, is our Corp Rodon. Our Corp Rodon is a decent NV team, having NV Burst and NV Shield as well. She also have good damage for a permanent unit. And it's not hard to achieve those numbers because some of them are locked behind charge potency. And it's not hard to achieve those numbers because while some of them are locked behind charge potency, the way you gain charge potency is pretty foolproof in my opinion, so you don't need to think too much about how to use her. On the other side, she's completely outclassed in sinking due to how her passive works, making her normal infliction bad. She also needs quite a lot of ramp up time, possibly 6 turns to reach an acceptable number of damage, and that brings us to the third problem, which the scaling is not high enough to justify ramping up for 6 turns. Oh yeah, she also has Unfocused Volley. But overall, she's pretty mediocre, but a good alternative if you don't have some of the ID. 6.4 out of 10. That's all for the Season 6 kit review. Keep in mind that at the end of the day, it is your account, and you do whatever you like with your account. So this is purely just a guidance if you don't understand some of the IDs here. Thanks for watching and goodbye!